This is the first episode of Season 2 of Vetted with Jen M. Wagman, but today's episode is different. First, it is being released on a Sunday. After today, new episodes of Vetted will drop every Tuesday morning. And this Tuesday, we're kicking things off with a powerful conversation featuring VA Inspector General Cheryl Mason, where she speaks directly to you about what drives her office, how to engage meaningfully when you see shortcomings in the VA system, and what it really takes to file a complaint that leads to accountability. But today is not about what's next. Today we pause, because it is with deep honor that we mark the 20th anniversary of the day Captain Brian Letendre gave his life in service to this country. And it is my privilege to dedicate the first episode of Season 2 of Vetted to his memory, and to the family who has carried that legacy forward with strength, grace, and purpose. It was on May 3rd, 2006, that United States Marine Corps Captain Brian Scott Letendre was killed in action in Iraq. Captain Letendre was 27 years old, assigned to the Marine Forces Reserve's Inspector Instructor Staff, 1st Battalion, 25th Marine Regiment, 4th Marine Division, out of Plainville, Connecticut, serving in the Al-Anbar province of Iraq. He was killed while conducting combat operations when a suicide vehicle-borne improvised explosive device detonated near him. But that's the military record. It's not the whole story. Brian Letendre was also a husband, a father, a Marine who had already served in Iraq during the initial invasion, including during combat operations near the Nasiriyah province, where he was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat V for valor. He later volunteered to return to Iraq with an 11-man team, advising and instructing an Iraqi battalion in combat operations. Those who served with him remembered him as the kind of officer who did not lead from a distance. He got dirty with his Marines. He was always out front. He was charismatic, focused, calm under pressure, and magnetic in a way that people followed him, not just because of his rank, but because of who he was. And he was Dillon's dad. Brian Autumn's son Dillon was born on March 18, 2003. At the time, Brian's unit was beginning its movement into Iraq for Operation Iraqi Freedom. In the congressional record honoring Brian's life, it was noted that Autumn gave birth to Dillon the day before Brian crossed the line of departure into battle. Autumn has spoken publicly about that moment in 2003. She was still in the hospital after Dillon was born when she heard the news that the war had begun. Brian was already deployed. Out of the collision of joy and fear, she wrote "Daddy Loves You," a song for their newborn son, so that Dillon would know how deeply his father loved him. 3 years later, on May 3, 2006, Autumn received the news that no military spouse ever wants to hear. She's described that moment this way: a room that falls silent while everyone is still talking, mouths moving, but no sound, because your mind is trying to comprehend what has just been said. I didn't ask Autumn to retell that moment in this interview, and that was intentional. There are places that grief has already paid admission, and there are stories that a Gold Star spouse should never have to perform in order for us to understand the cost. So today, I want to name what happened before we begin, not to reopen the wound, but to honor the man, the family, and the life that continued after the knock on the door that day. Because Autumn's story is not the only story of what happened to Brian. It is the story of what happened after, what she did after, in the days, the weeks, and the years that followed. Autumn questioned almost everything, except her faith and her son. She stood in places where she had once waited with banners and balloons to welcome Marines home, only this time her husband was not coming off the bus. When Brian's 11-man team returned from overseas, she was asked to be there. She later said someone handed her an American flag, and beyond her faith, that flag was the only thing that she had strength for. She raised it, and that moment became part of the calling behind her song, "Raise Your Flag." That calling grew. Autumn became a country singer-songwriter. She released Raise Your Flag on Flag Day in 2011, with songs born from journals, grief, motherhood, patriotism, and love. She became a speaker. She became an advocate. She founded the Golden Star USA Foundation to support military families through difficult times. She opened Abby Adams Boutique, later expanding that mission through stores rooted in giving back to troops and families. Proceeds from her boutique support her nonprofit and military families in need. And somewhere along the way, what began as survival became service. Autumn has shared that after speeches, people would line up to tell her their stories, often military members who needed help. She took names, took phone numbers, went home, and built a way to respond. That is where today's conversation lives, not in a polished version of grief, not in the public mythology of strength that too often asks Gold Star families to comfort the rest of us, but in the complicated, sacred aftermath. Faith, motherhood, purpose, memory, and the daily decision to keep showing up. So May 3rd is not simply a date on a calendar. And in today's world, as new service members and their families continue to face uncertainty and risk, remembering families like the Letendres is not ceremonial. It is a responsibility. In this episode, Autumn and I talk about fate, grief, purpose, and the unexpected intersections that followed, like the extraordinary moment years later when she randomly met the Marine who had handed Dillon his father's flag at Arlington, thousands of miles away at Disneyland, because someone recognized her standing at the front of the park that day. That chance encounter became a lifelong friendship, one that endured through deployments, hard seasons, good seasons, and ultimately helped connect Autumn's life and her work to Annapolis, Maryland. This is not just an episode about loss. It is about what love does with loss. It is about a Marine named Brian. It is about Autumn, Dillon, and the family who carried him forward. And it is about the lives that can be changed, sometimes even saved, when one person finds the courage to raise her voice after the world has gone silent. I'm Jen Wagman, and this is Vetted. It's 2026. So this is a very special year. And you have dedicated your life since then to doing amazing things with your pain and your grief. And that's why I wanted to spend some time talking to you today. Sure. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you've done and what that was like turning around from where you started 20 years ago to where you are now, which is 6 stores in Indianapolis, Annapolis, and why Annapolis, actually?
Sure. I mean, 20 years is a big time frame to cover, but I guess the short version of it is that when life stops, when it all initially occurs, um, figuring out tomorrow isn't even at the front of your mind. You're literally surviving minute by minute, moment by moment. And it's just as if you're in a vortex trying to know where to go, who to talk to, what to do. But then your duties are still present. And mine at that time as a mother was still a job that I still had to do among the grief. And I think the healing for me began in looking into Dillon's eyes. And that was such a poignant reminder amongst the pain that I had a purpose to keep my head as much above the mess that it was in of how do I go on. And his eyes would become a huge portion of my story and why I'm in Annapolis, because they not only affected me in making sure that I was leaving a lasting impression of a healthy environment for a little boy who was 3, to try there. I knew there was no way he could understand losing his father to war. But what he could understand is mom loving him and creating an environment that he felt safe and happy. And I chose that the times that I needed to be sad or remove myself because the moment of life was just too much, then I kind of did that in my own quiet space, away from him, so that there were times naturally at events that he might see me cry. And as some little kids do, they just stare at you and you're like, Mom, are you crying? And that gentle touch in his eyes again, just like looking at me for what do I do? Kids, respond from us so much that um I knew I needed to really concentrate on who Autumn was going to be, not only for myself, but for him. And that was not easy. I mean, there were days I didn't want to get out of bed. I would literally wake up, drop him off he was attending the Goddard School at that time. I would drop him off and come right back and crawl into bed. And there was not a moment. I was like, it took all of me to save what moment of a life of happiness, of joy, um, was when I went to go pick him up. And there was a guilt too of I didn't need him to be there, but I sure didn't need him to be at home with me in sadness. I wanted him to be with kids and playing and not the heaviness of mom, being an emotion that he really couldn't quite understand. I mean, he was a child. So as time went on, I had been an elementary school teacher, so love of children naturally, but I knew that going back into the classroom was going to be very difficult. Spending the day, I was already finding myself at that point. Um, I would make a turn into the driveway and just like, oh my gosh. And I remember making a turn, scaring myself that my brain it was on autopilot, just surviving. And I thought, I really need to heal. I need to find something else that I'm doing for the time being. And so I attended an event, a memorial event in Maryland, or in Connecticut, excuse me, in Connecticut. And it was to honor, we were stationed in Connecticut when Brian was last deployed. And they were putting up his picture in the rotunda of the Capitol. And they had other families as well that they were doing a collective memorial service. And um, it was a beautiful service. In the room, the clickety clack on the marble floors. It was as if the room kind of was just busy, like, and I remember sitting there thinking, they have no idea. All these people just coming in, and here we were, the center of the Capitol, but they were still going about their day. I mean, it was a Gold Star service, and there was no pause of who they were telling the people who had sat in the chairs in front about. And I just remember getting lost in freedom. That this is freedom. They had no idea that all of they being the people just going to what their day consumed of, that they had no idea that what was happening on the main floor was an event where, in my heart, the nation should stay silent. They should pause. They should honor these men and women that were being announced at the podium by the state. But life was happening and the world was moving. And it was such a reminder to me that even though the most tragic thing had happened in my life, that the world is never going to stop for the memory or the remembrance that we desire, because life goes on. And there may be a few that will take that moment and pause, which there were, and they were in that rotunda trying to do that for us families. But it was like after my brain just kind of absorbed all that, it was like the speaker's voice came back to me, and he said, and if there's anyone from the families that would like to say something. And at this point in my life, I had never gotten up or done anything beyond being a teacher that we might be called to speak in front of the class or to the parents for a parent night. But I had never gotten up to a crowd. And I noticed no one was getting up, and I thought, oh, these people have tried to do something so nice for us, that I need to just go say thank you. I just need to get up. It's been 20 years. Wow.
Well, I don't think Tom ever 20 years. But you did. You got up.
I got up. And it's funny how you live life and you don't talk about it every day anymore. And it's still.
You found your voice that day.
I did, but you feel like you go back in time and you're just like, wow, these emotions, they're still always there. Like people, use the phrase, aren't you over it yet? But this is a true reminder 20 years later that there's no such thing as get over it. But that moment of getting up there just to say thank you. I remember the rotunda that had been so clickety-clack. It was like this hush bell. And I remember looking up to people over the edges, and it was finally silence. And they were listening to me say, that the movement was freedom and that they have died for this. And I could not thank you enough for allowing us to be here and honoring them, because it reminds us that although they have died, they lived. And we are here because we loved. And although we may be in immense sadness, we loved. And the room, just that hush that was there, was a moment of me feeling like, okay, I got up. I got up today. I moved today. And I knew
You didn't just move. You moved an entire
possibly
room.
The room,
You're moving people now.
I hope so.
20 years later.
I hope so.
Your words are moving people. They just moved.
Well,
they just
thanks.
moved me.
Thanks. And so a general came up to me and he said, I need you. And I need you to be at the welcome homes. And I said, oh, well, I don't know what I could do for the welcome home. And he said, I need you for them. I need you to come speak to my men. At this time, infantry was only men. And he said, I need you in the room to speak with them.
Wow.
And he said, you're going to help reduce the pain when they get home. And he said, would you come speak at an event? And I said, I'm not sure. And I was like, I really am going to need to think about this, And so they told me the event, where it would be. And I just kept thinking, am I strong enough to do a welcome home? I mean, I just buried my husband, and here are the families, a place I've been so many times, that they're going to be running to them. Can I do it? Am I strong enough to do it? And I did it. I went. And that event was one of the hardest, and the beyond hit Brian's team coming home, which I was there for that as well. And that's a whole nother amazing story in itself. But the when I went to that first open home to be there to speak to the families, there was a couple sitting at a table off to my right. And I could hear her crying so hard that I thought, okay, I either need to stop sharing my story. And my brain was not okay in reality, but I was coherent enough within thought that I was like, okay, I either am affecting them so much to where I need to just end my speech and get off the stage, or I just keep going and figure out what's happened afterwards. And so um, I see her rubbing her husband's back. I assume it's her husband, and but she's crying. I mean, loud. Like, people are starting to kind of like look. What's happening. Well, eventually, I stop my speech, or I end my speech, and the room is standing and applauding, and I am not even thinking of that. I am only thinking of this couple. Like, I've got to find them. Did I do this? Am I the cause of her cross? Well, there's this long line of people wanting to talk to me, and they're telling me all their stories. I'm struggling with this. What do you suggest? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. What do I say? And so I'm trying to like catalog all of the people and their comments, and am I doing enough, or what do I say back? And then I see the couple. They're in line, and I'm like, oh no. Oh my gosh. Okay, Autumn, no matter what they say, just you take it. You take it on the chin, and you just be grateful you're here, because I didn't know if it was going to be positive or negative. And she she could hardly talk, so he speaks, and he says, "Ma'am, this was a really difficult day to be here." And I said, I'm so sorry. I saw you crying. I saw your wife crying while I was speaking, and she said, "No, tell her." And he said, "This morning we weren't going to come. I told her I was going to take my life today." And she didn't know when, but she knew that I was contemplating suicide. And I told her during your speech that, okay, I'm staying. I'm staying. You don't need to worry about me. I'm staying. I think sometimes the way that God has created us to be is that our pain and our strength is not always understood for when it is to be used. And at that moment, my selfishness had me only thinking about me, and maybe I had done something and it was all about me, and how was I going to respond to these people in front of me. And I wasn't mature enough at that age. I was in my 20s to really start thinking beyond Autumn. I was trying to prepare for, do I make a comeback or do I not, and a defensive angle. And here they had put me on my heels saying, I'm okay because you had the strength to say something that you didn't even know would change our lives. And that was a gift that I would learn that day, that it didn't matter where I was booked for 10 people, 5 people, 10,000 people, that one person makes a difference. And I will speak for that one person in the room that may have a moment like that gentleman that told his wife, I'm staying. And it was the pivotal point of every time I would go on to then speak across the nation for 9 years. And it was that moment that every time that I was struggling, and grief was just reeling through me, and I thought, I'm crying before I would even get on the stage, and I had to go down and act like I was happy, and I wanted to share this story, and I wanted to help others. That who's helping me in the room? Here I am. You have a room full of these gorgeous flowers and things I love. It's like this presentation of everything that is me, but they meant nothing for the pain and the story that I was too struggling with. But it was that moment that would forever change my course of who I would become and what I would say and what I would do on the road. because life is that precious, and they made it so apparent to me that day.
You have done something that very few people do, which is make me speechless. um, I think that that day, the way that your life was changed, um, I would be so bold as to say you weren't selfish, and you're being a little hard on yourself by suggesting that, but that's not for me to say. I admire everything about how you've moved from that day on, and it's an amazing story. I do think you found your voice that day.
Yeah.
A lot of people have benefited from you and from your words.
I'm a very faithful person, and I felt like it was at that time that when you're so low that nothing in the world, everything that I loved had been taken from me besides my son, right? In my mind, like in the emotional mindset that I was in, that my deepest conversations became my conversations with God, and just saying, where do you want me? What do you want me to say? How can I heal? But yet it's like you can be so faithful, but yet you're in so many dark places too, because you're in so much pain that you feel almost like a fraud, and that you're fighting the anger, the pain, the horribleness of life, but yet you're still with this connection of hope and faith and strength and prayer. And that makes a difference. You feel best when you're there, but yet then you can turn in 2 seconds and have the pain. And so when I was in that mix of life, it was trying to not be the Debbie Downer every place I would go, right? Every room I would fill, and it was like you could almost hear like, oh, that's the girl. She is the one who lost her husband, and you knew the whispers, but at the same time, you just wanted to be seen as you. Some days you can somewhat relate to a celebrity. Not that I was a celebrity by any means, but you could somewhat relate to a celebrity going, I just want to go to the grocery store. I just want to go somewhere, just be a normal human being. Well, there is no normal, but as far as going somewhere where the whispers weren't, her husband's letting you die.
You were tired of being a poster child.
I was.
Somebody once in sort of a similar environment as you said, I'm tired of being the poster child. I just want to do good work.
Yeah.
And then I would like to go and be in my space.
Yeah, right. But then someone said to me, but Autumn, that's your superpower. And I was like, what do you mean? And they were like, you need to harness that is your story, and you are now able to go do exactly what happened in Boston. And I said, you're right. I should not be ashamed to say I'm a Gold Star spouse. I really should be able to say, because in that I'm able to tell about my man. I'm able to let people know who Brian is in my heart, and who was from the days he was alive. So I get told by my sister-in-law, Katie, that there's an event that she's heard of, and it is Snowball Express, and it's happening in California, Oakley. And at that time, they allowed 3-year-olds to go. And so she says, you should sign up. You should go. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, Brian died in May, and this event's in November. It's so soon. I just don't know. I mean, here I'm, living on that high from that welcome home event, but can I really do it? Can I go out there to this event? Excuse me. So I end up going to Snowball Express in 2006 was a group who tried to bring in, or who did bring in, families of the fallen. It is now into a huge organization that Gary Sinise now leads. But back then, it was a small group of us, families of the fallen in the nation. And they brought us out to Disney World to give our kids. It was all about the children. It's not about the parents. Mm-hmm. It was all about giving the children the honor of their parent who had been killed in action, and who had died serving our country. So that was Dillon being 3. He really could not take on much at that time of what it was, except for just a fun event, right? But for me, it would be the first event of healing, and actually a song that I would later produce in life was where I wrote the bridge of that song. And the driving up the hill to Oakley was just, it was so emotional for me personally, because I love the American flag. I have them ever. And I always have. And riding up that hill, there were people just lined with their flags and cheering us on. And it was so hard because it was like, we shouldn't be the ones they were cheering on, our kids for sure. But, it was in honor of our family member. And it was just such a patriotic pride moment that I would forever recall, just that imagery. I mean, even now I can just see those people. It just they're not forgotten, moments for us. And it was incredible.
Can I stop you for a second? You say when you're driving up there, they're cheering in the American flag, and it's not for you. It's not for.
It was for us, but I mean, it was.
Because it's for our family members.
Yes.
I've talked to you for a little bit now, and before we did this,
Yeah.
and we've gotten to know each other a little bit. Do you appreciate the fact that you've been serving this whole time? Because I don't know that. Well, no, I don't know that you really serve, and so does Dillon, even now. And I don't know him. This is real service, and even if Brian had lived, your family serves with the one who wears the uniform, and really,
I would phrase it as we serve alongside. I would not ever want to take away from the veteran, because they truly are the service member. I did not wear the cloth of our nation. They did. He did. And to that, I don't ever want to take away from their service. So that's why I hesitate on saying for us. Were they there for our children and for us as families? Absolutely. But the reality was, they weren't there because Autumn did something, and they weren't there because Dillon did something. They were there because Brian gave his life. And that part is not to be forgotten. And yes, they're honoring us as the families, but that's why I say alongside.
And I don't take anything away from that, but our service members couldn't be where they are doing what they are without the love and support of the families.
Oh, it's so true.
And so it's not taking away from the cloth, but we need to really remember when we're supporting, because the communities, our civilians, need to understand and support the families and give as much love and support to them at home when they're overseas and fighting, because they're not getting enough either.
Especially the children,
Especially the children.
The spouse, or even the parents at times, but the spouse for sure, spouses, male or female, they need support too. But we are supported when our children are supported naturally, and so is the service member. Yeah. But
it's a really brutal dichotomy, because I respect everything you're saying about wearing the uniform and that, we didn't raise our right hand, we didn't make but in so many ways, there's not a respect and not an understanding by civilians and by the outside community of what it means to be in those families who are moving, who are dealing with injuries and dealing with what it is to come back and to live with. And it is a family situation. And so and even after, when the worst happens. So I just, especially with what you've done, which is above and beyond, like so much that you had to do. So I don't know.
I thank you for that. I mean, for us, it is hard for us to see beyond just that service member. We know that the family is there, but again, we're just going to continue to focus on our kids. It's kind of just where our mind moves. But just to take you to where Marilyn is, since you asked that. So I continue to bring Dillon to Snowball Express. And it is now 3 years later, 2009.
Okay.
And I've been speaking across the nation. Dillon has been in a tux more than he's been in plain clothes. He has attended many events. He is, he's more proficient on a stage than he is, anywhere else because he's part of Mom's life. And I've drug him everywhere with me. But it was fun to be able to watch him be a little man and learn what a coin was. I mean, people would take him in and have him slam down coins. At this point, we had met President Bush, and he had President Bush's coin, which President Bush, if you ever watch this, you did mention that you would take Dillon hunting. And he is now 23 years old. And I think it is due time for him to be in Texas. So, sir, those words were spoken at the White House. But
gosh, I hope President Bush watches those. But amazing.
But anyway, he has President Bush's coin, and another reason that he has used this now as his pocket, because coining in the military, especially the Marine Corps, is to have your highest ranking coin. Well, of course, he could not drink, but he had learned that if he would go in and slam down that coin, he would get a free Sprite. And so he would say, Mom, he'd hold that coin just all day long, ready. And I was so afraid he was going to lose it, just like, oh my gosh, he's going to lose that coin. He's going to lose that coin. And so he would go around, and he learned that, slamming that coin down. And his dad would have been so proud just to watch him, be able to do it. And the Marines would chuckle, and because everybody'd say, oh, who do you have? And there would be, Medal of Honor there or somebody, and they would think, oh, we've got something that, can outrank. And the Dillon would slam down. And actually, Medal of Honor coin, I have a lot of respect for that too. And that is as close as you can get to president, if not above in some ranks. But he would slam that down, and it was either that or Sammy Davis. That was the first Medal of Honor coin that he had. We all loved Sammy Davis, and so he would use those if he had them, like his little gun shooters in his pockets.
I need to work on my collection.
Wow. Yeah. So anyway, he loved it. So the road, would become a secondary home for him. And I didn't always, once he got older into school, I wouldn't take him everywhere, but we were meeting my late husband's best friend, Tim Kashak, at Disneyland, because he lived in San Diego. And Tim said, hey, Autumn, when you're here, let's meet at Disneyland, and I'll meet you at the Mickey and or Worldland. I always forget which ones are. And so we're in California, and Oakley is still putting on this as a primary sponsor for the families. So I'm standing with Dillon waiting on Tim at Disney, and a lady comes up to me and says, are you Autumn? And I thought, oh my gosh. And I had I'm just I always like to kind of assess the place we're going person. So my antennas are up, like,
well, you're a Marine's wife.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so I'm like, Dillon's in my hand, and I'm squeezing his hand even stronger. Like, they trying to distract me. And so, yes, so anyway, she's like, oh, I'm sorry. She could tell my face that I'm like, okay, who are you?
Yeah.
And, she says, oh, I'm sorry. I saw your name on the back of your sweatshirt. And I had a sweatshirt. Yeah, that's the moment where I just felt like, sorry.
We're from that generation where you're supposed to look, or, you don't wear the name on the sweatshirt because that means someone could steal you.
So here we're at this event. So we've all got our garb on, that says, it definitely was not. It was a very, we can identify you type of event, because we all have lanyards and everything with our names on. So anyway, she says, I saw your name. And she says, my boyfriend would love to talk to you. And I said, I'm sorry, who's your boyfriend? And she said, well, his name's Aaron. And he has not stopped talking for the last 3 years about looking into Dillon's eyes.
Oh.
And she said, he gave Dillon the flag at Arlington.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, oh my gosh, I would love to meet him. When they're married at Arlington, it's such an amazing, Eighth and I and what they do, and any of you Eighth and I, what you do. We are forever grateful for your service, for your commitment, for your discipline to families. Aaron, I of course never would have known who he was, because you don't know who they are. They're just assigned to you for the day. But their training and their discipline in such an emotional setting, day after day after day, or multiples within a day, right?
It's unreal.
Unreal. So he's the one who presented Dillon the flag. And so I said, I would love to meet him. We're staying at this hotel. Is there any way that you guys could come meet us? And her name was Ashley. And so she said, here, I gave her my contact information. And what are the chances, right?
I don't know.
So
But she recognized you and that you met them.
in that
that's
spot
really,
from
really
Indiana
odd.
to California.
I
You know?
That's really bizarre.
So
I mean, I totally believe in that stuff, so it's not really unreal, and
It was
I'm
just
a freak about it, so I believe it. But
right.
yeah,
Well, so Aaron and Ashley come to the hotel, and this is where it's important for people to understand. I was 3 years out from the death date, but there are triggers, and people think, you've gone through healing, or you've lived life, and you're, on the day to day, what sets you back, right? And this moment for me, in talking with him, I remember sitting in that room thinking, oh my gosh, I can't even, their words just sounded like, like a movie, kind of like, I didn't even know if I was answering the question right. And there were times I knew I wasn't, because I could just see this stare like, that is not what we just said, and thankfully, Dillon had food poisoning. He had gotten food poisoning.
she said thankfully.
I know it's terrible, but Dillon had food, and he was like, "Mom, I don't feel good," and I'm like, "Right now?" And so he went to the bathroom and he was throwing up, and they were like, "Oh, we're so sorry. We'll get out of here." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it was so wonderful to meet you all," and so time passes. It's been about a year, and not quite a year, and I'm driving over these railroad tracks at home, and I get this heavy feeling of, you need to contact the Marine that came to the hotel. And I can't remember his name. I can't remember. I'm like, oh, her name was an A and an A, and I think his name was an A. And so I'm typing hotel, California. Like everything, because I know that I had sent a thank you email after, and I'm trying to find the information. And so I finally, I'm online, and back then it was like AOL would pop up as the little chat, like somebody else that is online, and here they are. And so it would pop up.
You're not dating yourself at all. Not at all.
I am young. So anyway, his name pops up.
Stop it.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so I'm like, I'm sorry, this is Autumn, and anyway, I'm like, this is going to probably sound crazy, but I was driving across these railroad tracks and typing
she does.
and so I'm like, because I'm like awkward, I just say hello to you. And so,
none of this is awkward. None of this is crazy.
my son could tell you, that's men and words.
No.
So anyway, I write him this, and then all of a sudden it gets really serious. And he says, I'm so thankful you reached out to me today. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Are you still in California? And he says, no, I'm in Iraq. And I'm like, oh, wow. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were deployed. And he had mentioned it in the hotel room, but my brain had just not absorbed anything. And he said, thank you for that moment. I really hope Dillon is enjoying the coin. And I'm like, coin? I don't remember getting a coin. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And so I'm like, I don't want to lie to yeah, thanks,
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't even know what he's talking about. And so, so anyway, I said, well, I just want to reach out to you today. I just got this heavy feeling to write to you. And he said, Autumn, it's really hard for me to tell you at this moment, but I just lost a Marine in my arms.
Oh my God.
And he said, I'm on my computer composing a letter to the family.
Oh my God.
And Brandon Lara had just been killed. And so he was in this emotional state naturally. And I said, oh, I feel like there was just this moment that I needed to reach out to you today. And Brandon, I think if people believe in angels or just those moments of letting people know, here was me telling Aaron this moment. I didn't know what it was for, but just that I needed to reach out to you today. And so he, of course, we went on to create this very strong friendship while he was deployed, because I didn't know him from Adam. He didn't know me from Adam. And we share one moment, which is Arlington National Cemetery. And he presents the flag to my child, but we don't know each other beyond now California. So we get off this chat, and our story could really be a movie, but we get off this chat, and I'm like, I call my parents. And my parents knew that when I would be in these like really immense stressful moments, my brain would just shut down, and I would usually share, or I would ask them, could you please write this down? Could you? And I would put it in a Ziploc bag with what I had been told, because I knew that I couldn't remember. And I was grieving a totally internal grief of like, Brian, I'm sorry. I want to remember and I can't remember. And it was like, I was fighting this like battle of like, I know this is important and they did this for you. And now I get home and I can't even tell people what happened. And it was, I felt like I was just embarrassed. And then anyway, so I started calling my parents and sharing when these things would happen. And I said, Mom, did I ever talk about anything when I was in the hotel room with Aaron? She said, yes, he gave you a coin and you said that you put it in your safe. So I ran to the safe, and I'm digging through the safe to find this coin with written description on it. And so I say in another chat to Aaron, because I can't remember what he told me. But I have the coin now. Mm-hmm. So I know it's a Marine Commandant's coin. And I say, could you please tell me again, so I have it in written form for Dillon, what the story is with the coin? And so he sends me the write-up now in an email of the coin. And the story, the short version of this is that after his day of Arlington Cemetery, 8th and I, he was also tasked with then being at the Commandant's home that evening to escort the VIP guests from the Commandant's home. And he said it was like any normal day if it's just your duty. You go from, there's no crying of like, oh, I've been in Arlington all day. Don't you think it's kind of crazy? Now I'm at the house. I mean, it's what it was their job. So he went from there to the Commandant's home, and he would be at the door escorting these guests from the Commandant's door to their vehicles. And so the party attendees are out, and the Commandant is now coming out the door, and he's standing at attention, of course. And the Commandant says, Marine, as they usually do. And he says, how you doing, Marine? And he said, I don't know what made me this day break from our training, but we always answer the Commandant or any higher command. I'm great, sir. It's a good day, sir. Everything's always good. Nothing's ever bad, And he said, not so good today, sir. And he said he was in like mid-step, and he turned back around and said, Marine? He said, sir, I had to look a little boy in his eyes today and present his flag for his father. And he said, it's been a tough day today, sir. And he said, Marine, have I ever given you a coin? And he said, you have not. And he said, thank you for what you're doing. And he said, sir, if I ever meet this little boy, I'm going to give him this coin.
Oh my gosh.
So I fell in love with Annapolis, and back here for friend's wedding and other things I knew I had a friend in town. I knew there was somebody, and sometimes he wasn't here, but, it made me fall in love with this town, and it made me realize I'd be close to my man too at Arlington. And that was where I was like, one day I will have a reason to be there. I didn't know it would be Abby Adams Stores, but eventually, and now carry it.
I did not know how our talk today was going to go, especially I knew that I wanted to help you memorialize and celebrate Brian's life and the 20-year anniversary. Did not know it was going to be all of this. What a beautiful, beautiful story that this journey has been for you. We didn't even talk about some of the things that you have such a beautiful story. Like you had a soccer connection and you have a really cool story that I could, but I think a lot of what the point of what we talked about is the journey sort of takes you in crazy ways and you don't even know where we're going to be led. And that's, sure. I spend a lot of time sort of apologizing for, when I say things like I'm being led by God or whatever, because I don't want people to think I'm too religious or too whatever, because I don't want that to turn people off. But the fact is I am very faithful. I'm Catholic and I believe that. And I don't really care if you don't like it or not at the end of the day, because I know what I'm doing. I know that I have a purpose and I'm very mission driven, and a lot of things may be messed up in my life. Yep, this is the one part of my life. Yeah, I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm not going to apologize for it. Sure. And all the stuff you talked about, all of the guardian angels, all that stuff, I'm totally into, and I believe it. God winks, all that stuff. There's not a doubt in my mind that all that stuff happened for a reason. And we could just listen. Yesterday, I announced that I'm writing a book on LinkedIn, and there's a whole funny story about that. You have to tell people 8 to 12 times before it even registers. I'm not ready to tell people I'm writing a book. I'm not ready at all, because I'm not finished, and I believe in what if I don't finish what I'm totally finishing. I'm almost halfway there, but it's not going to register even when I'm telling you now, hey, I'm writing a book, and you know what, you're going to buy it and it's going to be awesome. No one's going to listen to me, so whatever, you're going to have to say 10 more times on this podcast, I'm writing a book. You want to buy it? It's going to be great. You won't have to buy it. I'll sign it for you and I'll get it too. And you know what? There'll be an action figure maybe. But anyway, you have to do all of this stuff. I will write your story. That's my point. No, I didn't know where this was going to go. And I would love to come back and talk about Abby Adams, sure, and all of this, because what you are doing now and after is a whole nother thing, mm-hmm, about the success of what military spouses are doing, and the dream for what you stand for them as well. I mean, I just spent a whole weekend a month ago with the Rosie Network, which I told you a little bit about. I need to get you connected with them, just because there's so much opportunity. There's so much that our military spouses and families can give to each other, how we can support them. And now that you're the poster child for. But it's I'd love to come back and support you, however. But for now, for this, I don't want to make you cry. That's fine. But I would just say this was a really, really amazing conversation. And I thank you. Thank you for teaching me, for sharing the story, because you gave me a lot today. Thank you. Stuff I didn't realize about myself even in listening. So maybe that's selfish of me to say, but sure, I really do. I thank you for everything that you've done for our country, for how you raised Dillon in the face of great loss and great sadness, and sacrifice for yourself, because you're a beautiful human being.
Thank you.
So no, thank you.
Those of you serving, thank you. To the families, you're cared about, you're not forgotten. Seek resources if you need them. There's so many people out there that want to love on you and do love you. And this is one example of that. So thank you.